Well, hello. My name is Dr. Eric Hoytucker, and I would like to welcome you today to the first chapter of my vocal pedagogy book entitled How to Sing, which is completely online and free of charge. This first chapter is going to be devoted to what I think to be the essentials of singing. It may go a little bit longer than some of the other videos to follow. However, I think it is critical. The fact of the matter is, it is rather ludicrous to think that in a 20 or a 30-minute video on YouTube, you can learn how to sing completely and efficiently. That just does not exist. Singing, dancing, painting, all of the art forms, those take a lifetime of learning. And so these videos are only meant to pique your interest, to maybe give you some ideas, and most certainly I hope that they appeal to those who have been singing and also to those who teach voice. It is a great and beautiful art form. So then, if you have the attention span of the common housefly, you'll probably want to pass on and find another video on YouTube, because I'm sure you'll find somebody who will tell you precisely that which you would like to hear in a good 5 or 6 minutes, right? So today I would ask you that all of these things that I'm presenting to you in these videos, that you consider, and that you consider with moderation. I like to draw the analogy of 2 aspirin will take care of the headache, but then again, 10 aspirin most likely will kill you. So the truth and where we want to find ourselves pretty much in the study of life is moderation, and is in the middle. So try these concepts, explore these concepts with your teacher, but you should be working with somebody, especially if you're serious about the study of voice. So with that being said, let's jump right in. So my voice teacher at Florida State University, Janice Harshani, used to say that in her opinion, there were the A, B, C, Ds of singing. A for alignment, B for breath, C for coordination of muscles, and D for diction. It is my opinion that I can pretty much wrap up the first 3 in today's video, which I think constitutes a good 90% of really fine singing. So I would like to explore these with you, and I think that they're all pretty much summed up in the notion of breathing and singing. Because to make it perfectly clear and fast, we breathe, and at the point at which we stop inhaling, we start exhaling tone. Walk in Jerusalem just like John. Walk in Jerusalem just like John. Walk in Jerusalem just like John. That's healthy function of the instrument, because it's a cycle that's 2-step. You inhale, you sing. You inhale, you exhale. But there's no inhalation, hold, and then sing. Now, something that really has to be discussed here is the breath support. And whether you choose to call it support, breath energy, flow, we're all talking about the same concept. And the concept here, what we should be looking to do, regardless of the various ways that we speak about the action, is the notion is to fill up the lungs with breath, open the rib cage, stay in the inhalatory process, and then sing without goosing too much breath too quickly out of the lungs and escaping. That's bottom line. Now, the way that we do that, we have so many different techniques, or claimed techniques, about how to do this. And I'm just going to give you one that I think is really pretty simple and easy to follow. Since these videos are intended for lifelong learners of singing, for singing teachers, for young singers, and also for those of you maybe who have never had a voice lesson, I'm going to be trying to be exhaustive in my language so there can be no confusion as to what I'm trying to say, right? So if we're trying to fill up the lungs, open the body, and then stay in that position, we can actually do that with physical cues. It does not have to be metaphorical. An expression that I've heard many folks use, they will say, I want you to inhale as if you are smelling a beautiful rose. And the problem with metaphors such as that is that those aren't very clear because we all smell a rose differently. And that's not clear. If you tell me, you say, Tucker, I want you to get the soft palate up and I want the larynx to comfortably descend on the inhalation. Okay, I can do that. And all of a sudden you hear the quality change in my speaking voice. Because you see, as I've been speaking so far, I have not really deliberately thought about my breath, except when I went to sing Walk in Jerusalem. And so if I take that breath and stay in that inhalatory position, the palate goes up, the larynx slightly descends, and I have my space, and I stay there. So I go, walk in Jerusalem just like John. Walk in Jerusalem just like John. Now, here's what I'm physically doing, so you will know. I take the breath in, I open up, I expand to my lower abdominal wall. So what I would ask you to do to experience this, take your thumbs, and I want you to just put your thumbs right inside the waist of your pants. And when you inhale, for right now, I don't care what you've been told to do, I want you to give this a try. I'm going to ask you to expand your abdominal wall to your thumbs on the inhalation. And here's one thing that you must consider. Most of us, regardless, we tend to hold our abdominal wall a little bit because we all don't want to let our gut hang out, for a lack of a better way to say this. I want you to stand completely comfortably right now because it is darn near impossible to expand gently and easily the abdominal wall if you're holding it to begin with. So you kind of get this pressure going on here. I want you to take your thumbs. I want you to put them in the waist of your pants. I want you to let that totally go and be just as easy, almost a drop as it were, of this wall. You're by yourself. And I want you to expand the abdominal wall to the thumbs on the inhalation. Now when you do that, here's what happens. You will feel that larynx slightly descend and that palate go up. Now the question is, how do I stay in this position to sing? The reason for staying in this position to sing is such that you do not force breath up too quickly through the vocal folds. Because a very good definition, the definition I like to use of support, is a consistent rate of breath flow at the vocal folds. And that's achieved by regulating how quickly the air escapes. Now, you can try and do it here at the vocal folds, but I feel that's injurious to the instrument. You want to make sure that the mechanics of singing are kept low, such that the vocal folds and the larynx is just a passageway by which the breath goes, where pitch is made, and then pitch is sent on up. So here's how you do this. What you do, put your thumbs back down there, and I want you to really have that open breath, and you feel it completely open. And then as you sing or speak, I'm going to ask you to slightly make yourself fart or pass wind. We can all be adults here. Now, to be clear, I'm not asking you to poop a cantaloupe. I'm asking you here to kind of like you had beans and rice last night for dinner, and you're sitting in church on a Sunday morning, the preacher's about to preach, and you just got to easily let one out, and you hope it's not heard, right? So in that fashion, I'm going to practice this for you. I'm going to take the breath, I'm going to try to make myself fart easily, and I'm going to say the Pledge of Allegiance, and listen to the difference in the quality of my speaking voice now to what it will be momentarily. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, the entire time that I said the Pledge of Allegiance, I had the body expanded, palate was up, larynx was down, and I made myself as if I were trying to fart very easily, which regulates the breath, right? I like to tell my students that in the perfect world, the greatest piano ever crafted was the 9-foot Steinway, right? This happens to be a 6, but the 9, great instrument, right? So that instrument makes that sound because of the length of its strings and the soundboard. If we were to start taking off feet off of that Steinway as I was playing it, the sound of that instrument would greatly change. Just like there is a big difference between a 9-foot Steinway, a 7, a 6, a 5/4, and then of course the upright. So I want you to imagine that your resonating space back here, it is the soft palate and the larynx. And the good Lord made ways for both of those two mechanics to open up. The palate raises, the larynx goes down. Now, there are some schools that depress the larynx, like the Malocco school, the Italian, or you can also kind of vault up your palate. But then when you're thinking about the mechanics of singing, and you're thinking about the mask, and you're thinking about this and that, okay, then how do you actually make art, and how can you possibly be expressive? It's very difficult. So singing, as I like to say, can be as easy as you make it or as difficult as you make it, and that choice is yours. It is quite easy to go, walk in Jerusalem just like John, walk in Jerusalem just like John, walk in Jerusalem just like John. When I'm doing that, all I'm really thinking about is opening and staying out. So I really encourage you to keep that 9-foot Steinway by staying in the inhalatory position. If we take in the breath correctly and openly, all we really have to do is maintain that position. And the way you maintain that position is by that slight feeling down, some people will say that they feel it much more on their sphincter. Some people will say they feel it on the pubic wall. Some people will say they feel it slightly above the buttocks. We're all built differently, so of course that stands to good reason. But it is a matter of keeping this open. So I like to say the breath occurs slightly above the belt or at the belt, and then the support is below the belt. Now I know that in these different schools of singing and different techniques and the way that we've been taught, I like to do a little bit of myth busting here, because sometimes folks will say that they breathe clavicularly, which of course is terrible, or that they breathe diaphragmatically, which is really silly because everybody breathes diaphragmatically, whether you're a truck driver or whether you're a Luciano Pavarotti, because we know the diaphragm is just that bell-shaped muscle that goes up and down about 1/4 of an inch on inhalation and exhalation. And you really have no control over the diaphragm unless you're dead, because otherwise, even as breath is escaping, it is still moving, but like about 1/4 of an inch. That's a really silly misnomer that needs to die. It's diaphragmatic, clavicular, intercostal. Some people will talk about they breathe from the back, which of course is silly because you don't have any holes in your back in which to take breath. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to create that open space. Now the intercostals, this is a little bit of a higher breath, a way to feel it, right? If you imagine you're trying to get your intercostal muscles here, your rib cage, to touch your armpits, for lack of a better way of saying that. That is a breathing technique that, of course, the great Joan Sutherland used and the great Luciano Pavarotti. But then the Italians, when they talk about appoggio, appoggiare, they talk about the lower abdominal wall here. Okay, newsflash for you. The rib cage is a unit. You can't just like flex the intercostal muscles and leave the floating ribs alone. It all expands open as one unit. So while you may make the focus of I feel it here or I feel it here, and those I completely agree with, what remains is that the rib cage opens at one time. And so you open it. Walk in Jerusalem just like John. Walk in Jerusalem just like John. Walk in Jerusalem just like John. Something else that is critical to singing. That breath, that inhalation, should be quiet. If the inhalation is not quiet, then the throat is not open. If the throat is not open, then you're breathing in the same manner which somebody who is dying and gasping for breath. And when you do that, that tires out the muscles. It also really is quite drying on the vocal folds. Hear the difference. And also hear the difference in the speaking voice. I'm not depressing my larynx. That's just where it goes whenever it's comfortably low, rather. What in the world can I do? I am a son of a gun. I. Now for some of you, you may say, okay, I dig it, but that's not a sound that I want to make because that sounds too operatic. And I understand. For certain types of commercial music, musical theater, that really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. However, I would contend with you that healthy singing is healthy singing. So watch. Using the same analogy I've been using, or the same tune I've been using. Walk in Jerusalem just like John. Walk in that Jerusalem just like John. Walk in Jerusalem just like John. Walk in Jerusalem just like John. Walk in that Jerusalem just like John. Walk in that Jerusalem just like John. Walk in Jerusalem just like John. Walk in Jerusalem just like John. It's the same voice. Stylistically, they could and should be different. However, it's the same instrument. It still should sound like Eric Tucker. Whenever in a symphony orchestra rehearsal, whenever they bring out the music, the librarian puts the music on the stand, they may put out music for Beethoven, Brahms, Gershwin, the Beatles, Styx, who knows? Still the clarinet, the violin, the instrumentalists, they have to be able to play that music, right? And so you have to be in control of your instrument in such a way that you can make different stylistic choices. So breathing and singing keeps that instrument free and open. I can't stress enough the whole notion about making sure that the inhalation is quiet. Because if the inhalation is quiet, that means the body's open, and you can get away with all kinds of stuff. Even if you choose to sing in a belt and go way up into the top and not turn over in the male voice, you can get away with that if you support it correctly. And by supporting, we're talking about keeping that consistent breath flow at the vocal folds. So, to go over this one last time, and I thank you for staying with me as long as this has been. I'm not keeping aware of the time, so I don't know. So we want to make sure that for healthy functioning singing, that the inhalation is quiet, that the breath comes in, fills up the body, and that we use the lower body to keep the breath from rushing too quickly through the vocal folds. You can experience that by that slight farting. Do the exercise. Do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I know that sounds a little silly if you're thinking about farting, but it does work. I've done master classes all over the world. And some kid will get up. I usually get the problem children, right? It's not like people want to send up good people. They send the problems. And I get a kid singing, and sure enough, they'll biff the high note. So all I do, I watch them, and I kind of observe what's going on, and I'll probably talk about the quiet breath and getting things open. And then I'll just walk up to them, and I will whisper in their ear. I'll say, when you get to the high note, I want you to fart. Feel as if you're farting. Really engage. Really, really do it. Do it just for me once, and if it doesn't work, I'll apologize. And usually the student laughs, kind of uncomfortable. But when they get over themselves, and when they actually do it, the high note clears up, because the problem was you're so freaked out about the high note that you're pushing air up there, and then you're just blowing apart the vocal folds. They're not making a steady pitch because you've goosed them, right? So try that for real, and I bet you'll find some real success. So I thank you for listening today. Remember, singing can be as easy as you make it or as difficult as you choose to make it, and that is your choice. Thank you very much. God bless you. Have a great day and sing well. Thank you.